Hello and welcome to this segment on CTN. To learn more, please visit ciotalknetwork.com. And the topic is IoT from POC to profits. And I have with me Peter Ambs, who's the CIO with the City of Albuquerque. Hi, Peter. How are you?
I'm doing well, Sanjog. Thank you for having me this morning.
Oh, wonderful morning and wonderful to have you talking to us on this very interesting subject because we are living it. In fact, we are doing an event on this next week here in Chicago. So there's a lot of discussion going on about IoT. And of course, it's happening around the world. It's something new. People want to tackle it and they're excited about it. But there is a set of conversations I've had, which became the reason why I wanted to bring this topic on the show here today. So we know a lot of people want to do proof of concepts, right? Of course, rightfully so, because you don't want to jump head over heels into new technology without doing so. But then they're doing it, but then they're scratching their head, what next? And we are being told that in many cases, people don't know what's the end game, and that's why they get stalled after the POC. But if you had that type of a crystal ball where you could tell the end game, then wouldn't life be beautiful? So what are we supposed to do in terms of either getting clarity on the end game so we are not stalled, or we have a creative way to move forward with IoT but at least go beyond POC? So what's going on?
I think, Sanjog, that I always try to address these POCs and anything that we do in terms of new technology, in terms of why are we doing this and what's the end result? What's the benefits to the citizens? What's the benefit to city as it provides services? Exactly. You've summarized the challenge all very succinctly there, in the sense that we can't do this just for technology's sake or just because we have sensors in the infrastructure and we can get data, but how are we going to make this more useful technology for our citizens and improve their quality of life, whether that's around transportation, energy, utility usage, and information around that. Public safety is a big one that we're really looking at in terms of getting a better understanding of how to deploy resources, for example. So I think that in many times, the POCs that we have don't necessarily have a return on investment that can be measured in monetary terms, but our value currency is different. It's constituency values. So being able to understand what that constituency value looks like as we go into a POC, and this is the eventual outcome. A lot of times we get an approach to do POCs that are just because it's an emerging tech or it's just kind of a trending discussion and topic amongst the tech community, but how is it going to improve our daily citizen lives is what we really need to be able to explain.
And while you go about this journey, people who are non-technical, they would at most go to a point of learning or understanding is that a machine-to-machine communicating. Okay, great. So what? So that's a good question. Yeah. And when we try to answer, we tell about possibilities. So when we talk about possibilities, they see, okay, our life is continuing as is. There is nothing earth-shattering need for something. And you want to bring me something new already on an already spilling plate. So that becomes a concern. And somehow, if you bring IoT, of course, you're going to spend money on it. And you do the POC, and then you go about looking for additional use cases, and nothing looks compelling enough. That's like losing face. But still, a lot of this is going on. So who is not thinking?
Who's not thinking?
Yes.
I think that's, again, I try to tie everything back to a business case, and I think that's where we've been successful here when we've had certain POCs. So, for example, soil moisture sensors, I'll just look at that as a case study real quick. We've got an aging infrastructure when it comes to our park and irrigation of golf courses and parks, and if we're leaking water into the ground, we're not optimizing our water usage. And being a desert city, high desert city in the Southwest, Albuquerque, water is, as it is anywhere, is a scarce resource that we need to make sure that we are conserving. So being able to put soil moisture sensors into the ground and into our irrigation systems to know when there's a leak, to be able to cut it off and turn that off immediately or when a sprinkler head pops in a park, were identified immediately. So any of these use cases, for example, have the ability to conserve water and then to reduce one of the largest expenses we have as a city is our water bill. So the ability to reduce our water costs, to reduce our water usage through smart implementations of IoT that can be an immediate win, and we can gain faith there, so to speak, and gain trust and credibility that this is why we're implementing IoT. It's not just because I can tell when and another application might be a sensor in a bus, the driver's seat, for example. Made the joke at one point that we're putting sensors everywhere, and pretty soon I'll be able to know when there's a sensor in this chair that I'm sitting in. We're doing that for safety reasons for some of our transit in those areas. So I think, again, being able to tie it back to a safety issue or tying it back to a real discrete and concrete business case is where we can gain that credibility.
So you picked up safety, which is, of course, very important. Citizen safety is paramount, and it's above everything else that you may ever do. Now, in the business world, it's the shareholder value. And in the government world, it's the citizens' expectation and the value you deliver is what counts. And there could be a risk of law of diminishing returns when you overdo it because nobody cares after a certain point. So you got to do just to a certain extent. So you may have had this, say, citizen safety issue came up and looks like a good use case, so you would put that in. But in order to put IoT in its most matured form, that means all related entities, everybody has to come together. And while you may have created a use case for this one area, all the investment that you will do has to be somehow justified, or the ROI has to be recovered in due course versus just saying we did it only for safety, right? When you go out there and build a business case, I'm sure people will not give you $1 million just to say, oh, I wanted to put sensors on the seats for safety on this transit car.
Correct.
So when you're talking about something bigger, maybe it's not the end game, but you have, or what's your approach rather, not you have that today, but what's your approach to even thinking about something which looks similar to an end game?
That's a good question. And I think that it requires this holistic view of the environment that we live in and what is important in our city and how Albuquerque could be different than a coastal city on the East Coast or the West Coast or a Midwestern city, but we have our own set of issues, so to speak, here that we can address through an IoT POC, for example. So this idea of having this holistic plan or a smart cities playbook is something that we're evolving to. But I think the ability to show some quick wins around the sensor work that we've done. Another example is the air quality. One of the issues we have today in Albuquerque is pollen. So pollen and how that affects asthmatic and people with breathing issues and so on, or those with allergies. So the sensors we have in the air for air quality and also for wildland fire smoke that comes into Albuquerque and settles. And so air quality is a big deal for us. So our ability to sense that and to sense when plumes are coming in, et cetera, is one that we report on, and using that data from the IoT sensors to be able to text and be able to provide SMS messaging and real-time information around the air quality situation, because that might be important. If your kids have a soccer game this afternoon, there's a breathing issue that might be affecting their health. So it's that type of data that we're deriving from the sensor-based networks that's important to us. We've heard that data is the new oil for local municipalities, for example, in terms of how the data is important, and the data is a resource that we need to be able to then leverage. So how do you if we're data rich and information poor, it's the ability to synthesize that data into information through business intelligence tools, et cetera, and reporting dashboards and the presentation of that, make that relevant to our citizens. I think it's got to be relevant, it's got to be reliable, and it's got to be secure. So all of these systems that we test and deploy have to go through that vetting process and that rigorous testing and proof of concept. And then, okay, so here's the data, here's the information we're getting, here's how we're presenting it to our citizens and through an open data format, for example. And I can speak to another example where we've taken our bus transit location data, made that open in an open data format. There's been applications written against it now on a mobile platform that provide citizens with real-time bus location. Why is that important? Because now I know exactly when my bus is going to be here. I don't have to call 311 anymore, and I can reduce the calls to 311, reduce that cost that's involved with that, and make that data available to our citizens in a mobile real-time platform. So I think that becomes part of this holistic overall strategy of providing data and information to our citizens that's relevant and reliable when they need it and where they're at.
Let's take a quick break, listeners. We'll be right back. And especially when you're talking city, you're talking citizens. So you could spend the same tax dollars on something what you just mentioned. Another initiative which city could use because there are multiple priorities. When you sit and look at the rationalization process, how do you justify something which is, for the most part, good to have, something without which the world will still continue, the city will still thrive? And then if that's the case, then when will you come to a point where you will say, yes, I tried it, so I know it works, but then I want to take it or commercialize it or put it in mainstream, but I'll wait because the same money could be used for, say, a children's library over IoT. So who's doing this thinking and rationalization and prioritization so that when IoT does get picked up, people are behind it versus saying, okay, we tried it, it did not work, so we just leave a bad taste in everybody's mouth. How do we prevent that? Please stay tuned, listeners. We'll be right back and explore.
Predict your company's future by creating it. Is your workforce able to connect, exchange ideas, and share brilliance simply and securely? Create tomorrow, today. Empower your people to innovate anytime and anywhere with secured BlackBerry Enterprise mobility management and document sharing solutions. To learn more, visit blackberry.com/enterprise.
Patient-centered care requires a connected enterprise. Are you ready? If you're looking to scale your healthcare IT efforts, visit redmain.com/health today. Whether it's to connect data from multiple partner solutions or developing software for unique needs, Redmain can help. To find out how Redmain can help your company deliver on the patient-centered care promise, visit redmain.com/health or call 773-693-3919. Visit today.
Your growing business needs a highly productive workforce, effectively communicating and collaborating without exposing corporate data to cyber attacks. Are you looking to balance security and workforce productivity? Move beyond short-term measures and securely scale your business with BlackBerry Enterprise Mobility Management Solutions. To learn more, please visit blackberry.com/enterprise. You are listening to CTN, CIO Talk Network, with Sanjog Aul. To learn more about our program, please visit CIOTalkNetwork.com. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back. So, IoT versus something else that would help citizens live a better, richer, meaningful, and a safer life. How do we ever get to a point where a relatively technology-centric initiative gains attention and gains ground so that you get to do things which could be more progressive? Who are we teaching and who is thinking and who is learning about it enough so that you get IoT on the table amongst other things and it does get the attention it deserves?
So I think with this, as IT technology has become a transformative and we're charged with innovation now, it's not just about keeping the lights on and running payroll and providing servers and storage, but we as technologists, we are now faced with these emerging technologies such as IoT and many others that are entering government space. And I guess the best way to put it is, if you look, the adage goes, show me your budget and I'll tell you what your priorities are. So priorities should be in your budget and you can work from there. Your budget then is an ongoing process that involves the goals and initiatives of your electorate, right? So from in a city, the mayor, the city council, the stakeholders, the community, the involvement that's involved, all of that, all of those inputs go into creating a budget. And so the more we can use some gamification type of activities around that to make sure that there's priorities are being met in a municipal budget. So I tend to not want to speak to a specific technology, but rather speak to here's the value, here's the things we can do with this solution. And if that includes IoT, or if that includes blockchain or augmented reality, or some other emerging tech that sounds a little bit far-fetched, then let's obfuscate that in a sense that let's speak to, because everything we do has a digital component to it today. And I'm trying to meld that more into the everyday language that we use when it comes to providing citizen services, because everything now has a digital component. There's the infrastructure that's traditionally been steel and concrete and roads and bridges, et cetera, now have just merging into the cyber world with sensors and data being derived from that. So it's the intersection between the physical and the cyber. And it all goes back to being able to get the data and the information from these infrastructure resources that tell us how we're performing and what's going on, and it's that relevancy piece again. So I think we have to get in front of our elect and our those that make the decisions so that they can see the value of what an IoT application can bring or any other emerging tech. And everything that we do today needs to be online, have an online component, meaning that's citizen transaction online and mobile. And so whether that's responsive design in our web applications or a mobile app, and I think we're getting a little bit of mobile app fatigue right now, because everything's got a mobile app to it. So there's these two schools of thoughts around responsive design and mobile in the application world, but the ability to do things, everything I need to do, it needs to be done on a mobile platform is really a challenge that we're facing across the board, because when I get pulled into a meeting or spoken to about an application, it's because there's been a conversation with a millennial group that wants their application. And I just had this the other day with our public safety and our CAD and systems that we use for dispatch. They wanted that to look like Amazon's, because that's the world they live in and that's the world they expect to work in. So these Amazon-like quality that are now the citizen expectation that needs to be into everything we do is where I'm trying to head our decision makers in terms of where we need to be.
So when you're talking about the value, right? Is it monetary, or can you still, given that you're the city, you could continue to say safety or well-being of the citizens? Because even what you're finding, at least based on my conversations, the city themselves are trying to figure out ways to create revenue to sustain, because just taxes sometimes are not enough given what's going on. So in that case, you have to almost think like a business. So are you able to show enough money-making capability as if you were a business for IoT for you to allow it to fly and go beyond the POC? If not, then we are sinking, so we are sinking some dollars into it, which could have been used elsewhere. So yes, we are getting that nice to have output, but then it will only go so far. So it's only a matter of time before people will say, yeah, you did something with IoT that looks good. But before it really matures, people will start losing interest and you will not be able to see it through the way it's supposed to. So how do you prevent that? So from the get-go, should you not be just thinking monetization and profits when you're going the IoT direction?
Certainly, Sanjog, I think that I've got to be able to tell you or anyone how much a service costs. What is the cost of service? What is the sustaining model look like? Many times in government, we implement systems with capital dollars. And then in year one, we've got the OPEX support and maintenance. So the total cost of ownership over the expected life expectancy of an application I need to be able to tell you what that's going to be. And it's got to be able to sustain itself through a budget process that changes every year. So to get to that point, you've got to go through the requirements, the impact analysis, all of that type of research to be able to justify everything we do in our budget, right? The idea that we want to turn our city infrastructure from more of a cost center to a profit center is intriguing to me, and it's something that we're doing right now. Is looking at all of the resources that we own as a city, whether that's street lights and traffic systems and bus shelters and all of our right-of-ways and our whether it's parking, whether it's fleet vehicles, is how do we take all of these resources that the city has traditionally used and has in real property, for example, and buildings, and how can we market them to the private sector through P3 type of an arrangement, or whether it's a small cell implementation, our telecom, everything that we do needs to look towards automated and autonomous vehicles. So the network that needs to be in place to support vehicle to infrastructure type communications is going to require high speed, low latency, bandwidth type applications. So in transport, so whether that's 5G, whether that's Wi-Fi, whether that's low power WAN, whether that's beats fiber into the neighborhoods, and able to do all that, we've got to think differently about how we have traditionally used the city resources and assets that we have, and start to market that towards the telecom providers, towards the smart city type applications, so that we can gain some revenue from these underperforming and underutilized assets that the city owns. So it can be as simple as maybe it's providing a kiosk or some advertising on a bus shelter, for example, to a digital type of component that we can get revenue from, that will then sustain and fund an investment fund for smart city type of applications around IoT and these other type of emerging tech. But we're not going to be able to do all of this with the existing static budget that we have that's already been squeezed and optimized to the point where we're providing the city services that we always have. But now we're expected to provide smart city apps across the board. And so that's an area that we're really starting to come to an agreement upon with our elected officials and our city resource owners around real property and our infrastructure around traffic, parking, you name it, is the ability to market those as a tangible asset for smart city application.
So we definitely have spent the due time in terms of seeing how do you justify and how do you go about doing POC. But when you want to take it all the way and go mainstream and literally embed that in your DNA, which would actually require us to handle the integration of data, the data management, integration of applications, security, all of that needs to be done. And in order to build a platform from scratch is usually very complicated for many organizations, even commercial, let alone the city government, because this is not your core focus. So would you just go ahead and buy or rent it? Is that the best way for organizations, in your case particular? Does it make sense so that you're not unnecessarily creating complexity and changing the way you function till the time you have seen it to completion and in production and seen some value, and then you see whether you want to bring some of that platform in-house? What's the best approach that you would recommend? Please stay tuned, listeners. We'll be right back and discuss.
Your growing growing business needs a highly productive workforce, effectively communicating and collaborating without exposing corporate data to cyber attacks. Are you looking to balance security and workforce productivity? Move beyond short-term measures and securely scale your business with BlackBerry Enterprise Mobility Management Solutions. To learn more, please visit blackberry.com/enterprise.
Patient-centered care requires a connected enterprise. Are you ready? If you're looking to scale your healthcare IT efforts, visit redmain.com/health today. Whether it's to connect data from multiple partner solutions or developing software for unique needs, Redmain can help. To find out how Redmain can help your company deliver on the patient-centered care promise, visit redmain.com/health or call 773-693-3919. Visit today.
Predict your company's future by creating it. Is your workforce able to connect, exchange ideas, and share brilliance simply and securely? Create tomorrow, today. Empower your people to innovate anytime and anywhere with secured BlackBerry Enterprise Mobility Management and Document Sharing Solutions. To learn more, visit blackberry.com/enterprise. You are listening to CTN CIO Talk Network with Sanjog Aul. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back. So we're talking about, okay, we're done with POC. Yes, you build a business case and looks like we are ready to roll. But then in order to take it to a point where it's actually used, it requires you working with the partners, ecosystem, do the integration, data management, security, and everything else in between. All of that requires some platform building. What's a recommended path to biting at this big apple? One bite at a time, a smaller bite, chip away at it, or we should take this in-house because nobody else will know any better?
So I think that a city the size of Albuquerque, which is a large, medium to large type city, but we're not exactly an NFL city in terms of a multi-million population. And so with that is the corresponding budget. So we have to be intelligent followers of technology. And in many ways, we're looking at those cities and those applications and solutions that are emerging. And we need to be good at number two, being number two sometimes. And I'll give you an example. So our city elects came to us here recently and said, hey, we were in Boston and we saw the Boston bump application and for pothole identification, and it's based on the sensor type network. And we tried that here in a little POC. And we don't have, and necessarily, that's not our big problem here in Albuquerque, is potholes, right? And so what might work in one city doesn't necessarily work for us here. So we have to see how things play out with those that are on that bleeding edge, so to speak, and that are investing in the R&D and that can do that. We don't have the luxury or the affordability to go out and really try things out and see if it's going to work or not when it comes to an emerging tech solutions. So we want to build a portfolio of partners that are good at this, that have tried and tested it, and now have commercialized their applications. So when we look at creating a government as a service type of a platform, I'm never going to be able to do that with internal resources or capabilities. We need the private sector, and we need the research university, and we need the startup and the entrepreneurial community that are coming up with these ideas and bringing them to market. That's the marketplace and the solutioning portfolio that we're going to be able to draw from to be able to distinctly bring in solutions that we can then manage as a portfolio of work and basically our body of work that we have. So this idea of as a service, so everything is a service, government as a service is creating a platform of government services. We're gonna need those P3 type partnership, and those that are involved in civic tech, and there's a growing community of civic tech companies and organizations that are supplying government type of solutions to municipalities. OpenGov, for example, is one we just recently signed a contract with because we saw the work that they did in Boston, for example, and they're doing in other cities. And we can see this is the outcome that Albuquerque is going to have by entering into a contract with OpenGov, for example, in terms of a data presentation, the data visualization of what we have. Today, early on, Albuquerque was an early adopter in the OpenGov movement, but being able to just provide data that's traditionally been stored in firewalls and in file formats in a public world, it's not good enough anymore. Now we've got to take that same data and offer it that way also, but we have to put it into data visualization and context and tell the story of, are we getting better, worse, or staying the same when it comes to providing city services and creating livability within our cities. So it's really that's the key, is leveraging our private sector partners when it comes to solutioning.
And do you think anyone out there is cooked to a point where they could lead and guide you? Yeah, they may not know more than you because that's not your core job and they're the service providers, for example. But do you think IoT has reached that level of maturity where the type of integrations that you are looking for, you should have, these people would have an idea?
Certainly, there's some leaders in the states that we watch and that we pay attention to. Chicago has the array of things. They're doing some great work in Washington, D.C., in New York City, and in Las Vegas, for example. Those are some cities in Kansas City. So those are some cities that we see as in that leader space of IoT, and certainly we need to watch and learn from the work they're doing so that we can then apply it here in Albuquerque. So being part of that community when it comes to smart cities conferences and staying connected is very important. I think it's also important to become involved on a national level we're a US Ignite city, so US Ignite to NSF, we're a smart gigabit city, so we're trying to stay connected with these cities, and because we're all going to be able to learn. Nobody should be doing this in a vacuum and having to rewrite the playbook every time.
So here you are looking at the level of connectivity that you need would definitely require you to interface with your ecosystem partners, right? It could be third-party services and others. And they always say that it should not be a weakest link issue, right? Because you should not undermine on this whole IoT initiative should not be undermined because someone else is not as incented or as excited about the whole approach, and they are not stepping up to bring up their technology, their approach to integration, and doesn't make you wait because you got a lot bigger purpose behind it. They may have profit motivation or something like that. So are you supposed to then rally the troops, become the fight viper, get these guys to really step up and run shoulder to shoulder with you to bring this IoT, or can you literally have ways to get them to come along, but not necessarily at the same pace as you? What is that what I call as it takes a village to put IoT together. So do you need every household in the village to be equally excited for you to pull this off?
I think you need to have at least the key elements excited, and those elements are going to be around the infrastructure. Who owns the infrastructure? Do you have access to that infrastructure? Because traditionally, our transportation around traffic and the intelligent traffic systems. So cities have fiber and conduit throughout an entire community for traffic control, and there's fiber there. And so, do you have that? Can you leverage that? And sometimes there's been interpretations that no, you can't. Then I've got to spend millions of dollars implementing fiber right along next to it. Whereas other cities have said, yes, you can access the ITS network. You can get access to the conduit. You can get access to the junction, the infrastructure that exists there. So you've got to. That's part of my challenge is telling that story to the resource owners. Okay, so there's the infrastructure that's needed to support. Then there's the transport mechanism, which is the broadband, the low latency, high speed broadband that's needed wirelessly and through fiber, deep fiber, that's needed to transport the data from the sensors to the gateways back to the analysis boxes. So, and then there's the end user who's going to use this data. And so, yeah, you've got to build the consensus through that collaboration of the resource owner, the broadband networking that's required, and then the intelligence community that's going to use the data and it's actually going to write applications against it, et cetera. So that's really, I think, the key players that you've got to get involved.
Let's take a quick break, listeners. We'll be right back. And I wanted to bring back the talent issue, which is almost crucial with any initiative, whether business or technology. And something new, IoT was not known to people. Yes, the underlying integration and other type of things you will do may have some commonalities, but this is brand new area. And even as a CIO, you've a lot of experience, but there are certain things you may not know in order for you to lead this initiative. So you need those extra sets of eyes, ears, and brains to support you. So how are you going to do this? Are you going to totally rely on outside companies which come and deliver? And is there a capability development internally from a talent standpoint that you're even envisioning? And if you are, then we know that budgets are always a big constraint when it comes to HR in the government sector. Means the salaries and everything else are always not as high as what the world would pay outside in the commercial sector. So these are some of the challenges people face. So if you were to outline your talent strategy and staying realistic with it, what would make sense in your specific case to pull this off from a talent standpoint?
Predict your company's future by creating it. Is your workforce able to connect, exchange ideas, and share brilliance simply and securely? Create tomorrow, today. Empower your people to innovate anytime and anywhere with secured BlackBerry Enterprise mobility management and document sharing solutions. To learn more, visit blackberry.com/enterprise.
Patient-centered care requires a connected enterprise. Are you ready? If you're looking to scale your healthcare IT efforts, visit redmain.com/health today. Whether it's to connect data from multiple partner solutions or developing software for unique needs, Redmain can help. To find out how Redmain can help your company deliver on the patient-centered care promise, visit redmain.com/health or call 773-693-3919. Visit today.
Your growing business needs a highly productive workforce, effectively communicating and collaborating without exposing corporate data to cyber attacks. Are you looking to balance security and workforce productivity? Move beyond short-term measures and securely scale your business with BlackBerry Enterprise Mobility Management Solutions. To learn more, please visit blackberry.com/enterprise. You are listening to CTN CIO Talk Network with Sanjog Aul. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back. So the $1 million problem of talent, and it doesn't get any better with the government budgets and the salary levels. And you cannot go into it without having enough confidence in the ability of people to pull it off. So the people do not need to be all from inside. It's like a workforce capability development issue. And that could mean outsourced contractors, in-house, specialized consultants, you name it. So if you had to build your blueprint, like talent blueprint, to build and sustain IoT, what would that look like?
We'd certainly we'd have to utilize the capabilities that exist in private sector and the solutions that come with the skills training that come with solutions that we're getting, but we don't have that capability in-house today. We've the developers we have are not Zigbee developers, for example. They don't teach that at the colleges and the universities, right? So what I'm doing today is working with our local higher ed and community college and the coding boot camps to develop an IoT curriculum where the city they could use the city as a lab, essentially. As a city, we've built an IoT network. The LP WAN is in place in Albuquerque to provide the communications backbone between the sensors and the gateways. But nobody's using it at this point because it's brand new and okay. And then we've got sensors in the air and the ground and infrastructure. So there's two things. One is we're working with a local university to develop a center of excellence, so to speak, or this capacity for IoT development and for IoT solutioning. So whether that's a Zigbee developer or it's someone that understands the ecosystem that's involved in IoT with the network and the sensors and the gateways and coming up with practical solutions that use that infrastructure. So that's one way. The other is all of it has to be secure. So we're working with a local cybersecurity company to develop the IoT security model around. So that's a whole other area that security needs to be baked in from the beginning. So again, as a city and as an IT department within the city, we can't do this on our own. We never really have, and we never really will be able to. It takes that community of stakeholders to move this effort forward.
And if you are looking at the talent pool, and you mentioned that you go outside to these companies who would do the security, since they are so new, what's your benchmark? So someone like yourself or even in commercial sectors looking for outside capability, what's your approach to inviting someone to actually help you when we know that the whole industry or the whole space is so new? Is it like a leap of faith?
To a certain degree, we're leveraging the competencies that are coming out of our university system here that around cybersecurity to know what our vulnerabilities are, to know what the threat landscape looks like, to know what that weakest link in the infrastructure looks like. We cannot have an IoT device get compromised and then have a downstream effect to where public safety is compromised or a SCADA system is infiltrated through a open vulnerability that exists in some firmware in an IoT device. So it's that whole environment, and we know that many of these endpoints in our environment security was an afterthought. So having to retroactively go back and look at all of these devices that are on a municipal network, you can have tens of thousands of endpoints and understanding so how are you going to prioritize and how are you going to manage the threat landscape and the vulnerability analysis that goes into all of that. That's where we're at today, and that's why we're using the knowledge of our partners in that realm.
Given the kind of initiative it is, a new coming from the left field, so many unknowns, would you rather be a mercenary or a leader to pull this off? 1 minute.
Maybe one of each. I think that it takes thought leadership. Certainly, it takes a vision and it takes a playbook. The cities today are putting together their smart cities playbooks and their strategies around how they're going to evaluate, how they're going to deploy, and what is the areas in government that make sense. Is that utilities? Is that energy? Is it transportation? Is it the citizen engagement? Public safety, it's all of those, right? So really choose which ones to prioritize. Maybe it takes that mercenary, the deployment of thought leadership, but a mercenary to go in, and we used to call that rogue IT or skunk works, right? Today, we're seeing some of our best solutions come from those that are outside of IT and those that are able to, through a initiative that they've taken on themselves, show value in an application. So I'll just give a quick example. We had
30 seconds,
Yep.
Peter.
Okay. yeah, it's an evolving landscape of many moving parts. And I think certainly the thought leadership and the strategy, being able to articulate that is key as we move forward.
On behalf of the show and our listeners, thanks so much, Peter, for sharing your views on how the leaders from a city and even commercial sector can look at the type of initiatives IoT is, see how they can move it beyond POC and actually take all the way to profits. Thanks so much again.
Okay, thank you, Sanjog.
Yeah, listeners, please like us on Facebook, search for CTN CIO Talk Network, and be sure to follow us on Twitter. Thank you again for listening to this segment on CTN. This is Sanjog Aul, your talk show host. Till next week, take care and God bless.